Hi, my name is Veldora Rice, and I'm here to talk to you today about college application essays. I am the owner and director of Write from the Heart, which is an online composition and literature program for middle and high school students. We offer composition for the middle school as well as literature and AP English for the high school students. And a lot of our high school classes are college prep. I also have experience as a community college teacher. I've been teaching at the collegiate level for about 20 years now. So I have been on both sides of the college application process. I see the kids coming into the college, and I've also been the person who's been helping the kids create their college application essays at the high school level. So I wanted to talk to you today about several things that I've learned through this process, some things to help you and your child prepare their college application essay. I'm going to go ahead and speak directly to the student. So this might be a video that you would want your high school sophomore, junior to watch, possibly senior to watch as they're getting ready to write these college application essays. So when I say you, I'm mostly going to be talking to the students. So when we talk about college application essays, there's a couple different things that we want to talk about. Every college has a different application process. Some colleges require that you write an essay directly for that college. There are also scholarship essays that you might have to write. But the most common place that you're going to be writing a college application essay is the Common Application. The Common Application, if you're not familiar with it, is a website that has actually made the college app process a lot easier. Many colleges across the United States use this Common Application. You're only filling out the application one time, you're answering one essay prompt, and you're uploading everything, and then you're selecting which colleges you want your information sent to. I can tell you as a teacher writing recommendations, this has made my life 10 million times easier. I'm sure as parents, it's made your lives easier. It will make your lives easier as well, as you are filling out applications and things like that. With the college, the Common App, I'm sorry, they expect you to write an essay, and there are usually 8 prompts or so that they give you as an opportunity to express who you are, talk to the colleges, tell them about yourself. They are limited to 500 words. The prompts change every few years. They've used the same prompts the last 2 years. I would highly recommend that you look at all the prompts. We're going to talk about some of them today. We're going to talk through the best way to tackle those, how to pick the best one. I would also recommend that you look through that with another person. That's the first thing we're going to talk about, is finding a topic. But when you are trying to pick out your college application essay, you want to pick one that displays who you are the best. So picking which essay you end up writing on is one of the most important things that you can do. That you can write better or worse essays depending on the topic. So you want to make sure that you pick a topic that you like. So before we start talking about your topics or how to pick a topic, let's first start talking about what evaluators are looking for. Keep in mind, especially with the Common App, there could be multiple admissions officers looking at the same essay. Now, again, some colleges do require a separate essay that's specific to that college, which in some ways is easier because then you can tailor it to that college. For the Common Application, these questions are very broad. They are not college specific. They are focused on who you are as a person. These are things like talk about a mistake you made and something that you learned from it. Explain an experience that challenged you. There are questions like that. They are broad, open-ended, looking to show who you are. So the two main things that evaluators are looking for is who you are and how well you can express yourself. So when we talk about they're looking for you, They're looking for your character, your uniqueness, and your ability for personal reflection. They are not looking for a list of activities that you've completed. They're not looking to hear about what your mom thinks about you. They want to know who you are, who you will be on their college campus. One of the most important things that you can do in this essay is not simply to tell a story, but it's to tell a story for a purpose. You're telling the story to show something about yourself. That personal reflection piece is super, super important. That's what separates a okay essay or a decent essay from an excellent essay. It's not necessarily the topic. It's what you do with the topic and how you reflect on it. So the very first thing they're looking for is you. The other thing that they're looking for is pretty obvious. They're looking for a compelling essay. They want to see something that's interesting, something that talks about something that happened to you that has vivid, specific details. They read thousands and thousands and thousands of essays. And I can tell you right now, and I'll probably say it again, do not ever, ever, ever start your essay with, in this essay, I am going to tell you about. That is the worst way to start an essay like this. That does nothing to tell about who you are. It does nothing to tell anything about your character or what you can bring to the campus. It is the most boring way that you could start an essay. In fact, I would say that across the board. Never start an essay like that in any situation. You need to have some kind of interesting opening. You want to be memorable, but you don't want to be shocking, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes as well. But you want to be interesting. You want to catch their attention. You want to be memorable. You want to use vivid and specific details, which we'll talk about that a little bit more in a couple minutes. But you don't want to just tell a story. Oh, the biggest mistake I made was I wasn't kind to my brother. And then I learned that he's my brother and I'll always love him, and that's why I should be kind in the future. There are thousands of people that have experienced that, and nothing in that story tells me anything unique about who you are. Now, this is a really difficult thing to do because you only have, for the Common App specifically, you only have 500 words. 500 words is not a lot. That's about a half to three-quarters of a page. It's not a long essay. So you have to think through what details are most important. And you need to tell a story as well as answering the prompt in a really specific, vivid way. Theme is listed there, and what I mean by theme is exactly what I said before about personal reflection. If it's a story about some mistake that you made, you need to be talking about what you learned. If you learned forgiveness, then that is your theme. If you learned to listen to others and follow directions, that is your theme. So you need to have some sort of thesis or theme or idea that you're working towards that you can talk about as part of your personal reflection. You need to have clear communication, which we are going to talk about when we talk about structuring the essay and what that looks like. And you also need to follow the requirements. Again, it's a 500-word essay. Do not turn in a 600-word essay. Do not turn in a 550-word essay. That says, I am a person who doesn't know how to read instructions or follow them. That is not necessarily someone that they would want to have come to their college. Following the requirements and following the instructions, whether it's the Common App or a different application or scholarship essay, making sure you meet all the requirements shows diligence, care, concern, the ability to complete a task correctly. Those are all skills that go beyond the writing of the essay to speak to who you are and your character as well. So make sure that you're following all the requirements that are in whatever essay you are completing for college. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how you come up with this. What do you do? How can you write about whatever prompt you end up picking? The first thing you need to do is you need to find a topic. The best way to do that is with brainstorming. I'm going to talk a little bit about brainstorming, but if you're interested, on our Facebook page, I am offering a freebie that I will be posting the day that this video goes live, so make sure to look in the Facebook group, but I'll be offering a free printable with brainstorming ideas and actual brainstorming prompts for you to help you find a topic for your college application essay and how that associates specifically with the Common App. But some things that you can do to brainstorm for a topic are you can list ideas. You can make what's called a cluster map, and that's the picture that I have right here on the screen. It's where you put a topic. This one is particularly describe a family celebration that has special meaning for you, and then you put your ideas out in bubbles and you continue to go out, and then a lot of these things could be ideas, and you could talk about how important Easter is to you and your family and why that is a tradition that you want to carry on to your children. That is a wonderful essay topic for a college essay. Another thing that you can do is what's called free writing. Free writing is where you pick a question. One that I might suggest is, what makes me unique? And you write that question at the top of your paper, and then you set a timer for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and you write continuously. You don't stop. You don't check for grammar. You don't really even think about what you're writing. You simply just write down whatever pops into your head. And as you do that, a lot of times ideas come up, things that you haven't thought about pop out. I usually recommend that you do the free write, set it aside for a couple hours a day to come back and look at it and then see what kind of ideas might be in there. Another thing that I have my students do when we are doing our workshops for college applications is we look at every prompt that is available for the Common App. This is true of other essays as well. If there is more than one prompt that you have able to answer, answer every one of them. Just 1 to 3 sentences. How would I answer this? They don't even need to be complete sentences. If it's talking about what's the biggest mistake that you learned from, you just write down, when I broke my arm riding my bike, because you know what that means. But a lot of times, if you're forced to answer a prompt that you don't like, sometimes you come up with a really good answer. Reading through the questions, there's times where you can say, man, that's really, really broad. I don't really know what I could say. But if you force yourself to come up with something, sometimes that ends up being the essay that you do. I had a student who was convinced they were going to talk about the most important experience that they ever had in their life. But once they did this prompt, they found out actually it was about a lesson that they learned through playing soccer. And that ended up being a far better essay than the original one that she thought she would be good at. I would even suggest at times, I have a lot of my college applications workshop kids write 2 essays, and then we pick the one that's better. Taking more than one the whole way to completion is a good idea if you have the time to do it, because sometimes it ends up that your the final product ends up being better on an essay that you weren't expecting it to be. The other thing that you need to remember when you're looking at a topic is that the focus of the topic should be you. This is not a tribute piece. Your grandmother might be a wonderful woman who went through amazing things, but this is not an essay about your grandmother. It's an essay about you. Now, you can certainly talk about your grandmother, and you can talk about being in your grandmother's kitchen and what you learned there, but it should be about what you learned and how you have created a sense of self through that family connection. It should never be about, look how great my grandma is, because your grandma is not the one applying to college, you are. It should always be about your background, your character, and it should also talk about your future. Whether that's in the essay or in the conclusion, you should always be talking about how you're going to take what you talked about and apply it later in your life. You want to make sure that you're not the person being acted on in your essay. And what I mean by that is a lot of students make the mistake of bringing in other family members, which is great. I talked to my mom about this situation that I was having with my best friend. That's perfectly great. That shows that you take advice from people. Wonderful. But if your whole paragraph is about, I had this problem with my best friend and I talked to my mom about it, and my mom said, you should do this and this and this and this and this, and then I did it and it was great advice and my relationship with my best friend was restored. Well, that's not really an essay about you. It's an essay about your mom telling you what to do. And is that really the impression that you want to give a college administrator, that the best way to display yourself is my mom tells me how to do stuff and I do it and it works out really great? It's not really the impression that you want to give. So make sure that you are the one acting. You can certainly say, my mom gave me advice. I thought about it and I realized this. Or I decided to do this. You always want to be the one doing the acting in your essay. And you also want to focus on experience, not observation. We're going to talk more about this in the don't part of the discussion, but you always want to make sure that you are talking about things that happened to you or that you did, not things you observed. It can be a real temptation, especially if you've had a tragic thing that's happened in your life, unfortunately, or something great that's happened in your life. Your sister got accepted to some college, or your brother joined the Marines and you went to his basic training graduation ceremony and it inspired you to become a Marine yourself. Again, that's an observation. You went to his ceremony and you saw he did this and you saw he did this, and then that inspired you. You need to make it about yourself. What are the things that you want to do with that experience? You can certainly talk about the graduation, but it should be a small part of your essay, and the majority of the essay should be your thoughts, your feelings, again, your character, and your future. All right, so once you pick a topic, which is a very difficult part of the process, I would recommend that you spend a good amount of time finding a topic. Think about it, write it down, brainstorm, set it aside, come back to it a couple days later. You want to make sure you have a good topic before you begin writing. But again, I would highly recommend that you write 2, even 3 essays if you want to. Develop several of those ideas out fully to see what you come up with, because sometimes it doesn't work out the way you think and you're trying to shoehorn a topic into a prompt that it just doesn't work the way that you thought it was when you wrote the essay. So try to develop 2 or 3 ideas. So let's talk a little bit about developing those ideas and structuring your essay to stand out for evaluators. First of all, this one kind of seems self-explanatory, but I have seen a lot of essays. I have seen a lot of college essays, and I can tell you that I've seen these mistakes made even by college students. Don't make these mistakes. You want to make sure that you are following standard structures. Make sure you're using proper grammar. Use your spell checker. Use your grammar checker. That's what they're there for. Never, ever, ever put in an emoticon into your essay. It might look cute in text message. It does not look cute on a college essay. Do not put them in. Do not use text language. Write out the word before. Do not put a B in the number 4. Again, you think I'm being funny. I'm not. I've seen it in college essays, and I've had to correct it. That is not the way you talk in a college application essay. You want to put your best foot forward. You want to have proper structure, which we're going to talk about in a second. But you want to have an introduction, you want to have a body, and you want to have a conclusion. Don't write a poem. Don't just put a bulleted list. Here's a bunch of stuff I learned. You want to actually write it out in essay form. You want to use proper language. Don't swear. Don't use inappropriate language. If something is specific that a word has to be used for an explanation of your story, you should probably reevaluate whether or not that's an appropriate story to tell for your college essay. The other thing you want to make sure is you need to stick with what we call 50-cent words. If you think of the English language in monetary terms, there's what we call 25-cent words. Those are things like big, beautiful, huge. They're not great words. They're fine words. They're just everyday words. Then you have what we call your dollar words. These are words that most people wouldn't know, and you'd have to use a dictionary to look up. You want to stay away from those words as well. You don't want to go with beautiful or huge. You want to go with the middle ground, like the 50-cent words, like enormous, grandiose, things like that. You don't want to go for a word that the person would have to look up, because that makes you seem like you are trying too hard. And it also probably means to the evaluator that you went to a thesaurus and picked out a word that you thought would be impressive to them. And so it doesn't sound like your voice. It sounds like somebody went to a dictionary and wrote an essay that they think the evaluators will want to read. So they will see that and think, I'm not seeing the authentic self of this person. I'm not getting a sense of who this person is because I'm just reading the dictionary version of this person. You don't want to give that impression. Again, make sure that you have proper word count. I've already mentioned this. It does say something about your ability to follow directions if you don't follow the proper word count. Your introduction is the next thing that you want to work on. With your introduction, you want to make sure that you're catching their attention and that you have a thesis. Catching their attention can be lots and lots of different things. You can start in the middle of your story. Start with, that was the day that, and it just starts in the middle of the story. That was the day I almost died. Well, goodness, that's going to catch my attention. And then go back and tell your story. That's a great way to start. Starting with a shocking statistic. Starting with drawing a picture. My grandmother's kitchen smelled like Italian spaghetti sauce mixed with roses. That's an image right there. Use all of your senses. Don't just talk about the way your grandma's kitchen looked. Talk about the way it smelled, the way it felt, the emotional feelings that you had sitting in her kitchen. That's a way. Painting a picture with words and sensory details is a great way to start. I would recommend that you not start with a quote. Again, these people read thousands and thousands of essays, and there are so many of them that start with Abraham Lincoln once said, or Albert Einstein proposed. Don't start that way. It's a little bit cliche, and a lot of people do it. I would not recommend doing that. You also want to make sure in your thesis that you have, in your introduction, that you have a thesis. A thesis, again, is the theme, is the reason you're writing, is the purpose. You want to tell up front what lesson you learned, or what you're going to talk about, or what point you are trying to make, so that the reader knows exactly where you're going with the story that you're telling. And then when we talk about the body of the essay, you want to make sure you have specific details. Again, you want to be using your senses. You want to be really drawing pictures. But remember, you only have 500 words. So you want to make sure that you're zooming into a specific moment. Don't try and tell the whole story of your entire childhood in 500 words. It's not going to work. You want to pick out a specific moment and tell that moment well. Don't be vague. Don't talk about, I love my brother. He's the best. He's the greatest. You want to specifically talk about why you love your brother or what your brother has taught you. Don't be vague in what you're saying. You always want to have a positive tone. Be optimistic and active in charge of the action. Again, I already talked about this, but when I talk about being optimistic, it's not that you can't talk about bad things. If you, say, struggled with depression, you can certainly talk about struggling with depression, and you can talk about how difficult it was. But if your entire essay is about how depression is terrible and sometimes you can't get out of bed and the world is awful and you kind of hope that when you go to college it'll make things all better, that's not really the impression that you want to give evaluators. College is not there to save you from your terrible circumstances. You need to be in a place at the end of your essay that you are excited about your life, you are looking forward to the next step into your future, and you are optimistic about everything that is happening that's coming up. That doesn't mean you can't be realistic, but you need to have a positive tone and a positive spin on the things that you're talking about. You also want to be creative in your transitions and your sentence structure. Don't start every sentence with I. I said, I did, I went. Vary your sentence structures. Add prepositional phrases to the beginning. Add introductory clauses. Make sure you vary that sentence structure. If you have somebody looking at your essay, which you should have several people read your essay before you complete it and turn it in. Have them look at your sentence structure and ask them, are there ways that I can switch some of these sentences around or combine these sentences to make it a little bit more professional, a little bit higher quality. Having complicated sentences, but not too complicated, again, we're sticking in that 50-cent word area, is a way to show evaluators that you are well read and well written, but you are not overly flowery in your language or your sentence structure. So you want to be creative, but not overly stilted and proper in the way that you're talking. All right. And also, I did want to mention it is okay to deviate. I know I said use proper structure, but it is okay to deviate a little bit from structure. You're not necessarily supposed to write a 5-paragraph essay where you have an introduction, 3 supporting points, and a conclusion. It's okay if you have some sort of turning point in your story and you want to write a sentence that says, that was the day everything changed, and you want that sentence to stand alone, do it. That's very powerful. Right in the middle of your essay, one sentence. I realize that a 1-sentence paragraph is not proper structure, but if you do it in a stylized, specific way, it is very obvious to the readers that you're doing that on purpose, and it shows your creativity and your level of skill in writing. So if you have something like that you want to set off, if you want to add dialogue between you and another person, do it. That makes your essay very, very interesting. Make sure that you're properly punctuating that dialogue the right way, but add it in. It's okay to be a little bit creative. And then the last thing you want to look at with structuring your essay is your conclusion. Conclusions are often neglected because people get to the conclusion and they feel like, I already said everything I need to say and I'm done, the end. But conclusions are a place to sum up what you said. You're not retelling it, you already told it, and you have a limited number of words. So sum it up. Make sure you remind them what your thesis or your theme was and what you learned. And then you also want to use the conclusion as a way to look into the future. Tell them how you're seeing yourself once you get into college. How does this lesson or this story that you told or this thing that you learned, how does that apply to your future? What will you do differently next time? How will that help you in your major? How will that help you in college? How will that help you in your future career? You want to talk about the future because, again, that shows I am ready for college and I am looking forward to being a part of college, being a part of your community, and also I'm looking at utilizing college as a stepping stone into my future. College admissions officers want people that are going to graduate and go on and do great things. They love to talk about their alumni that started YouTube or became a CEO of a great company. So when you talk about your future, that's part of their investment in you, is how will you go on and do great things because you went to their college. That's a great thing to talk about in your conclusions. All right, so you have your topic, you have your essay. I mentioned that you want to make sure that you have someone reading over it and revising it as many times as you possibly can. But I do want to talk a little bit more about what not to do and what topics not to pick. I think this is really important that we talk about what to avoid. It'll help you narrow down what kinds of things you're looking for and what topics are best for a college admissions essay. So when we look at what not to do and topics to avoid, there are several different things that you want to make sure you're not doing. You don't want to give your resume. You are filling out a college application, and there is a section for everything in the college application. There is a section for extracurricular activities. There is a section for after-school programs that you were involved in. There's a section for volunteer opportunities. You do not want your essay to be your resume and talking about all the different after-school activities you did. Now, you can certainly talk about one of those things. You can certainly talk about a team that you were on or an extracurricular that you participated in, but this is not a place to list all of the sports that you played. You want to pick one sport. You want to pick one club. You want to pick one experience. Pick one thing. It's not your resume. So instead, focus on one thing that helped you learn, grow, or change. Pick an activity that was hard and explain what you learned from it. Tell 3 characteristics that you gained from doing a particular activity. Those are better choices than sounding like you're giving them their resume. So don't give your resume. You also want to make sure you do not over-focus on the negative. I know I already mentioned this when I talked about picking your topic and making sure you're positive. But this is a big mistake that a lot of high school kids make. A lot of people make this mistake. When there's an essay topic that said, explain how you changed or how you learned from failure. The mistake that people make in a 500-word essay is they spend 400 words on what I did bad, and they spend 100 words on, and then I learned a lot from that, and now I'm better, and I'll never do it again. Well, that doesn't help you at all. That actually leaves a terrible impression on someone because all you're talking about is what you did bad. You don't want to do that. You want to talk about what you did right or what you learned from it or how you did it differently the second time because you learned from that first time. So your essays, a good rule of thumb is a quarter of the essay should be your mistake and 3/4 of it should be after your mistake. You should cover your mistake in the introduction, and that's about it. Or possibly the first paragraph or part of the first paragraph, but your mistake should not cover lots and lots of paragraphs. You should give enough detail, but not too much detail. Again, you're focusing on how you changed and how you're better now, not how you did it terribly. Be very careful about what mistake you pick. We're going to talk about this in the next point. Some ideas comparing what you did wrong to what you did right. Pick 3 traits that you learned from it. Things like that. So you want to look at positive things. The next mistake kind of goes with this, or the next topic to avoid, is don't be overly personal. Like I said, pick your mistake carefully. You don't want to pick a mistake where you got arrested. Please don't write about getting arrested. I know that sounds weird, but people do it all the time. Admissions officers talk about it all the time. They talk about, I can't believe what this student revealed about their sexuality, their sexual experiences, their arrest record, their illegal activities that they did. Don't talk about any of those. Those are all very, very bad. They leave terrible impressions, especially if they're shocking. You don't want to talk about that. You also don't want to talk necessarily about even things like my friends are all drinking, but I go to parties and I don't drink. Even that leaves a bad impression. Or I'm saving myself for marriage, and you're talking a lot about your sexuality in that way. You're still talking about something that's very personal and a personal choice. And yes, we want to be personal. Yes, we want to talk about our character, but there are other things that you can talk about that aren't illegal, like underage drinking or things like that. You also want to make sure that you are sensitive to the people reading. If you're going to talk about something that happened, like an injury or an illness that you went through, that is a great thing to talk about. Just make sure you don't go into the gory details and talk about bones sticking out of places or things like that. You don't want their lasting impression to be, that is the grossest description of an injury I've ever read in my life. You want them to remember it for you and how you overcame that thing, not the thing that happened to you. Again, you want to be the actor, not the person being acted on. You want to stay away from being a Romeo or a Juliet. You might have a girlfriend or a boyfriend that you really, really love. Don't write your college application essay about how much you love them and how much they mean to you. That is not the place to write a love letter to your girlfriend or boyfriend. Stay away from that topic completely. I also wanted to mention sharing political, religious, or social beliefs. I know it sounds like I'm kicking out every topic possible, but I do want to mention that you don't know the political or religious or social beliefs of the person reading. You can certainly talk about how those beliefs shape you, or those kinds of things in your life. For example, if you're religious and your experience happened at church camp, certainly say it happened at church camp. But you don't want to say something like, I went to church camp where we learned everybody that isn't of my denomination is going to hell. That would be a little bit off-putting to an administrator, because it shows that it makes you seem very closed-minded and judgmental. You want to be careful about how you share those beliefs. Even social beliefs, like maybe you're a vegan and you want to talk about how being a vegan or your activism in veganism has changed who you are and has motivated you to study whatever, sociology, or whatever your major might be. That's great, but don't start with, anyone who eats meat is a murderer and I can't stand them. You don't want to share your social belief in a way that makes the reader feel bad about him or herself. You want to invite them in. This is not a place to persuade people to your political opinion or your religious views or your social beliefs. It's not a persuasive piece, other than persuading them that you're a great person and you should be part of their college. It's not about your belief system and trying to persuade them to believe the same way that you believe. So be really careful about that. Instead, you want to focus on what that idea has taught you, or pick an unusual hobby or experience. Just don't talk about illegal ones. Another thing you want to make sure that you don't do is you want to make sure that you don't exploit others for your own learning. This one is tricky. This one and the next one are the ones that evaluators and admissions officers list as the two biggest mistakes that people make. Talking about mission trips, and we're going to talk about the next one, cliched experiences, specifically sports activities. But we're going to talk about mission trips right now. When you talk about an experience that you had, whether it's going on a mission trip to another country, helping out in a homeless shelter, working on filling shoe boxes for kids at Christmas time. Those are all wonderful volunteer activities, but you need to be very, very careful when you talk about them, because it can come across as very privileged. If you talk about, I never realized that there were poor people in the world, well, that makes you sound really, really sheltered, and it makes you sound like you are entitled, and that your parents wanted you to realize that not everybody has it as good as you, so you went to the homeless shelter and gave out soup. That makes you sound like a savior, like you have a savior complex. You don't want to come across that way. So make sure that other people are not your object lesson. You certainly want to be careful, especially if race is involved, because you don't want to look like you are not understanding race issues or race identity. You don't want to say something like, even though our skin is a different color, we're the same underneath. Again, that sounds very immature. It sounds very sheltered. Don't write about those topics. Pick a different experience. The only time that you should use something like this is if it directly connects with something that you want to study. If you went to, I don't know, Washington, D.C. and had an experience helping out as an aide in the Capitol building. That's not a mission trip. You're not necessarily exploiting the senators, but if that's what made you want to be interested in political science, then you should certainly talk about that. But don't talk about going to Africa and going on a mission trip and that made you realize that you want to help people. That's not specific. And again, it makes you seem more important and like the savior of the world, and you don't want to do that. Only talk about it if it's directly related to something that you're going to be studying. And then the last thing that you want to make sure that you don't do and is don't pick a cliched experience. Like I said, mission trips are the #1 thing that evaluators say are bad topics. The #2 is a sports victory. I know that it's really, really important that your basketball team won the state championship and you went from being a losing season to a winning season, but it's really hard to convey a Rudy moment or a sports victory moment without the film quality, swelling music, and emotional experience. It's really important to you. It's extremely hard to convey that on paper to someone else in 500 words. Don't talk about your sports victory. Instead, talk about, you can certainly talk about sports, but talk about it in a unique or unusual angle. Don't talk about teamwork and how it showed you how to be part of a team. Again, that's very cliched. But I had a student write a great college application essay, and she got into every college that she wanted to get into. She wrote about confronting a coach who was being verbally harsh at practice, and she stood up to that coach and said, I don't really like the way that you're talking to our team, and I would really like it if you could change the way that you are talking to us, handling these situations. And that taught her to speak up for herself and to change things and make a difference and make sure that she takes opportunities even if it's hard. All of those kinds of things. That's a different learning experience and a different, even though it happened to be her soccer coach, it was a different life experience than I learned how to be part of a team. So be very, very careful if you talk about sports that you're not picking a cliched topic. You want to make sure you don't pick a magical lesson. If you are tempted to use the words, and then suddenly I realized that's a magical lesson. We don't suddenly realize things. Or if we do, we need to pick a different experience so that we can talk about growth and personal learning. If we suddenly realized it, we didn't grow. It was like a magical thing that was just bestowed upon us by our thought fairy or our mom or whatever. We don't want to have a magical lesson. We want something that we grow and learn. You want to make sure that you don't inflate a moment into something bigger than it is. It's wonderful that you volunteer at a homeless shelter. You are not the best thing in the world because you did that. You didn't change everyone's life because you went one afternoon on a Saturday. Don't make moments bigger than they are. Again, that makes you look like you're bragging or you think more of yourself than you should. Make sure you're careful when you pick your topic, that you're not picking something that's common and you're overcoming something that's common. Things like bullying, a parent's divorce, a death, those those are fine things to talk about. They're great things to talk about. But again, just like with sports, you don't want to talk about how sports and teamwork is what you learned. You don't want to talk about being bullied and then you learn that you should be kind to everyone. You want to kind of look at it from a unique angle. Don't pick a common lesson that you overcame something in a very common way. Make the moment unique. Make it specific to you. Find an unusual angle to talk about those things. As you are writing your essay, make sure you're picking a good topic because that makes your essay way easier to write. If you're interested, I am going to put up a freebie to help you brainstorm your topics. I would recommend that you find a workshop that can help you write college essays. Thank you so much and have a great day.